Hello there. Welcome to The Climb, brought to you by the Digital Mastermind. I'm John Sarakis. Our show is about journeys, and this is the podcast where we talk to digital agencies about business, technology, marketing. So if you want all the tips, tricks, tools, mentorship, or maybe you want to be a mentor, reach out. Join our tribe of digital agency owners. We have bi-weekly calls to stay on top of the latest and the greatest. We have a Slack group where there's constant communication. People are just staying in touch with one another. So if you want to grow your agency, go ahead and contact me. Shoot me an email at Jon, Jon at digitalmastermind.com. Of course, just search Digital Mastermind online and you'll find it. Or if you actually want to go the old school way and type it in, www.digitalmastermind.com. Remember that this is live, so any interaction is welcomed. So go ahead, throw a comment, a question, anything, because today we're going to be talking about letting go. And that means letting go of employees that might not be working out and letting go of, the things that might be in the way of, their future, but also how to save the struggling employees. And actually, I got those backward. We're going to talk about how to save the struggling employees first, and then we're going to talk about, graduating the employees that aren't working out. But before we get into that, I'd like to welcome my co-host, business partner, and good friend, David McGraw. Dave, why don't you come out here, buddy?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, man. Going plaid today.
Going plaid. Got the fall colors out.
All right. Now, you actually have like fall colors like separated like somewhere?
No, but this is just obviously fall. And it's, honestly, in Florida here, you step outside and you're like, nope, not fall yet.
No, yeah. It's still in the 80s down here. And I welcome fall. But it's lower humidity, so it's actually really nice.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to get into it today because I want to make sure that we're on time, using the best of our time. So we're talking about, essentially how to inspire employees and keep them on track, as well as like letting go of bad ones. But what is your worst hire experience?
I've had quite a few. I've had like 3 employees that have quit day one.
Wow.
Literally, which, on hindsight, it was best of, for both worlds because It just wasn't a fit. They were able to express that at the end of the day. I chalked that up a lot.
They expressed it like verbally, or just they expressed it by just actually walking out?
Well, at the end of the day, I'd get an email, or on the way out, they're like, "Hey, can we talk?" And I just don't think this is right for me. And I'm like, "All right, not a problem." And that's and some just didn't come back, but they all at least gave me an email explaining why. And that was in our younger time. We didn't have any official onboarding process. Our processes for getting people in was really just throw them in the fire and see, and that worked for us at a young, startup-y, but we weren't and we were, working with entry level, just hungry kids wanting to, do work. So if you didn't fit that specific niche that we were hiring, it wasn't a smooth transition. So
day one, like what happened? Was the fire that hot? Like what occurred for them to say like, not a chance, I'm not working here. Here's an email.
Well, it's just the flow of agency. Not everybody's built for agency work. And I'm sure you've experienced that with Revital. And I'm sure a lot of our agency partners know about that as well. It's just, agency work is your head on a swivel, working on multiple projects throughout the day. And some people just like to sit on the same project for 3 weeks. And they don't like deadlines, and they don't like pressure, and they don't like clients, and there's definitely
don't like jobs.
Well, in the tech world, there's definitely two types of people. There's the people that like to sit on projects for, a year, and those are usually corporate jobs and old school companies. And then there's the agency life where it's, you got to be agile and you got to be with it. So We definitely have some of those. We definitely had some people that came in and was like, "Whoa, this is not for me."
Yeah.
So, which turned those experiences is now why on all interviews I make sure I go through the whole agency lifestyle, because that's what you get into. And I paint it. I try to scare them. Like, some of the people that are in these interviews with me are like, "Whoa, what are you trying to scare them for?" I'm like, "Because I don't want to waste anyone's time."
Yeah. Yeah. Just challenge them to accept what reality is in the worst scenario. I mean, I've had a ton of bad hires. I think I've had people not quit the same day, but quit the next day. That only happened once though. But yeah, I've had employees that were just and the cost of them was exceptional. One that just plagiarized and plagiarized and plagiarized. So like after a week, I checked all of her work, and I can't remember the name of the program, but checked all of her work, and like all of it was word for word plagiarized. And then when I called her out on it, she's like, "Yep, all right, well, hey, it was cool working here. Bye."
Wow.
Like, wow. All right, but I still owed her for a week of work. I guess I could have fought it in hindsight, but
Not worth it.
nah, not worth it. Just on to the next one. Yeah, had others that just turned out to be like, you met them and it's like, yeah, we partied together, and they were good at what they did. Also, another writer, and it just turned out like, nah, well, that person was a raging alcoholic, and that doesn't bode well for a happy work life balance.
So my mentor once told me that when you don't feel it's right, pull the Band-Aid, rip it off, and get it over with. It's never going to be different. I mean, I know we're going to talk about how to save, but I've kind of went with that advice since a bad hire. And that was, again, a long time ago. And now I just rip the Band-Aid off and say, "Look, sorry, this isn't going to work. Time to move on."
What's a signal though that you would say, like, is it just a gut feeling?
It's gut feeling mixed with lack of hunger. Like, anyone that takes an extended lunch in their first 2 to 4 weeks consistently, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, or just, if you don't see hunger and drive, or and they're leaving early and because they don't have anything to do, like if they're waiting for somebody to give them work, and they're just sitting around waiting for it and then leaving, it's just they have no drive and there's no hunger, and they're just not there to hustle. So
I would agree with that. And I guess what I would sum that up with, and it's something I look at, if you don't care if you don't care what your superior thinks of you or the way that you're perceived, then you're not going to last. Like, that
100%.
to me is just total entitlement, that there's an imbalance somewhere. So yeah, we're going to have to move you along. So what is your worst firing experience?
I've been pretty good at it.
Yeah.
It's
was that from you getting fired, or you just
you just kind of cut. You have to rise to the occasion. Like, before it happened back in the day, I used to get this this knot in my stomach, and I'm like, "Oh God, this is gonna be so uncomfortable." And then you would just do it, and it gets easier and easier as you go on. But I just learned, and we're going to go through some of these points earlier. If you just stick to the process, then there's no wiggle room and there's no ways to get off rail, because you can go off rail in a firing in a heartbeat, and that is where things go wrong. And so we'll get into that when we get to those bullet points.
Worst firing experiences when I was doing construction when I was a kid, working for my dad. I had to fire this guy. And he was a strange guy. This might be a little bit bizarre of a story, but here it goes. He would bring like these giant Ziploc bags. It's construction, right? So in Florida, and he would bring giant like Ziploc bags of like half-smoked cigarettes. So this guy wasn't going to work out. Yeah, it's just terrible. So his first week, he was late a few times, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, look, if you're late again, I'm going to have to, let you go." And he's like, yeah, you got it, man. Whatever, kid. Yeah, that kind of thing. I was like, all right, well, we'll see what happens. So he's, of course, late the next day. And I tell him, I'm like, hey, look, you're late. You got to go. So I was like, it's done here. He was like, well, my ride just left. I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm sorry. You don't work here anymore. Right. So he sat there and like pouted all day long. Didn't matter. Like, he just waited like till 2:30 to get, his car, and, it is what it is. But but before he was pouting and sitting there, he had this amazing excuse. His excuse was the reason he was late were two albino Sasquatches got into a fight over trash in the back of his trailer park. And I said, dude, not only is it so remarkable that you saw one Sasquatch, you saw two albino Sasquatches. Like, do you even know the probability of albinos in animals? So it was an easy decision to let this guy go. I mean, he wasn't upper management material, and there wasn't a growth trajectory for this guy.
Hilarious. So, wow.
Anyway, the next day in the house, turns out that this guy was an artist. He draws this picture on the wall of me in like negligee. Yeah, and it's like this is John. Yeah, it was the most bizarre thing. That is the worst hiring and firing experience. I didn't hire him for that matter, but I had to fire this guy. And of course, on a crew where you're the youngest guy, and there's all these other construction workers. Like, hey man, did you see the artwork?
That's funny.
Worst firing experience. A little bit bizarre too.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some interesting ones, but most of them have been pretty easy just because I just call them out for what's, lazy, or I caught you, bullshitting and not working. Like, it's just you cut them off.
Yeah, absolutely. And then now some of the things that people have to worry about, instead of drawing, odd pictures of your superior, you have like Glassdoor, you have like all of these negative reviews and these things of retaliation that people can have. So I think that's part of the psyche as well, why it's important to get into some of the steps that we're going to get into today.
I can tell you one of the you just reminded me of a crazy story that we had. I had an employee that was National Guard, and I had an employee that was of Middle Eastern descent. And they went out to lunch one day and got into a fight. And, this was very much, back in the day. And they said some things to each other that was terrible. And so when they all get back from lunch, I have to hear about this. And it's so bad and so anti-American, I'll say, that I had to immediately fire him. And I had to walk him out of the building to do it, because the emotions were so high, because it wasn't just these two at lunch. It was these two and a lot of other people. And then even after I fired him, he had to go in and get his personal stuff. He sat down and just started doing stuff. And I'm like, whoa, dude, you got to stop right now. And I had to escort him out the building. And that was the most intense scenario I had to go through. And it was pretty crazy. And it was just so abrupt, everybody was fine. And then it was terrible. So I can't even repeat the things.
I so want you to, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It's like, were you like in fear of like violence taking place?
Yes. No, I've had that happen in the workplace before. That's easy to deal with.
Yeah, I only had like one instance of that, and the guy he left so abruptly, he like ripped the door off the hinges, and that's actually why he got fired. And he was surprised too. He's like, "Oh, what, man? I'm having problems with my wife." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, check your stuff at the door. You ripped the door off the hinges." Like, yeah, man, it's it's not going to work out.
Right. All right, let's dive into these lists.
All right, so. First, I mean, a lot of the reason what we're talking about today is the cost of, losing employees, whether it's you pushing them out the door or them leaving on their own, right? So a couple quick stats I want to go over. The cost of a mid-range position, that's essentially someone that's like a manager, is about 20% of the annual salary if you lose this person, right? So think about somebody between the range of like 30K to 50K per year. So, for example, the cost to replace a 40K per year manager is about $8,000. And that cost is training, recruiting, hiring, a lot of those things that involve essentially the cost of an employee. Now, one more quick stat. The cost of like a top level, right? So let's say executive positions is 213% of the annual salary. So if that person's making 100K per year, it's going to cost the company $213,000 to find and replace that person and get them onboarded and back on track. All right.
So we got
at the table here. What's that?
We got a great comment. Actually, it's a great topic. We were talking about war stories of firing people, and Jennifer's back with. I walked my boss out one time when he was fired by phone because she took his job. So that is a great story, and that would be awkward as can be. And if anybody's got war stories out there, send them in.
That's wow. So firing your own boss, and then or he gets fired, and then you have to walk him out.
Yeah,
well, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of those stories because right now is the unemployment rate's at like 8%, like 7.9. But in the information space, this is interesting. It's a little bit higher. It's let me see. I got a number written here. 8.6%. So we're in the information space, right? Agencies, marketing, tech. So yeah, it's a little bit higher. But with all that said, let's get into how to save the employee, one of those employees that might be struggling, right? And the number one thing, and then we'll cover this in some of the other areas, is communication, right? So let's say that you have an employee, they're not doing their best for whatever reason. You notice this. That's what we're talking about today. And the number one thing to look at is communication. So maybe you haven't been communicating properly up front, but when you get into the communication side of things and just really understanding it, the idea is to dig in. There might be a disconnect, right? So you want to find out what's going on with your team member. It might be something personal. It might be something external. Either way, something's getting in the way of their work. You want to dig in and understand that, right? All right. So let's say you do that. Next is restating your vision. So this is something that I've had a lot of success with in the past, where somebody just doesn't understand where it is that we're going. They just have no idea of where the company is going to go, where they fit in, what's expected of them. Maybe they lost that along the way. So once those two things are done, and literally this is like a conversation that's being had. Identify the issue, explain what's missing, where are they falling short, address where they are with their performance targets, where do they need to be. And then the other thing too, as a manager, somebody that's managing people, are you doing one-on-ones? I'm surprised that so many people are surprised at the behavior of the people that are under them, and they're not actually doing one-on-ones. And it could be monthly, weekly, hell, even daily. But there should be some dialogue that's occurring where neither party is surprised at the situation, or currently, or what the future holds. So those are essentially the steps that I would take in communicating with somebody where they might be struggling.
So I like to talk about our process document a lot. I've invested a lot of time into it, and I think it's paid dividends. When you onboard somebody, not all the time, you don't have 24/7, 7 days a week to onboard them. You can't hold their hand the whole time, and so there's going to be times when you still need to do your job, and you need them to just kind of go self-learn for a little bit, and that's where that process document comes in. It's part of our process to make sure all new employees go through the 47-page process document, read about how we work and how we do things, how other teams do things, how sales does their things, so you know how to fit in. And when you do have that open time where you can't really work with them, tell them to read the process document and go through that, and then ask questions, and then go through their specific areas that affect them so that they're on board, they know what's expected of them. And again, write it down, because too many people just want to, do it live, and, changes every time. It's inconsistent. It requires your time. We have to start creating quality content for our internal processes so that we can make these processes repeatable.
Yeah, I think it's the gospel, right? Because even when you have the shadowing, which I think is inherently important, somebody that's going to see, all right, this is how things are done for that position. But when you have that, all right, this is irrefutable. We all agree that this is the way it's going to be done. And not everybody learns the same way, right? So some people are going to learn it. They need to question. So I think both of those things are really important. But regardless, at the end of the day, if you need just one, you need it written down. Otherwise, it's going to continually change and evolve, and it's going to get in the way of scalability.
Right.
Which brings up the second point when you're trying to help this struggling team member of yours that you want to save. Motivation. So I've talked about this before. So when you understand what actually motivates somebody, it helps not only communicate with them, it helps you incentivize them along the way, right? So this is a question anybody that's worked with me, I've asked this, and some people they struggle with it. I ask, what is it that you want? Because when I know what you want and I know what the company wants, I can align those two things. Magical things happen, right? We were hitting our goals, we're succeeding, right? So find out whether it's money, glory, recognition. Is it a sense of meaning or purpose? Is it just, opportunity where they have trajectory in the company? And granted, maybe some small agencies don't have that yet, but once you know what it is that your teammate wants, you can align that with what the company wants. And once you have them motivated, if you have a team that's motivated, an employee that's motivated, they're no longer struggling, because that's what we all want at the end of the day. Motivated people with a good attitude.
A motivated person knows what they're doing, knows the path they're on. They know the trail. They know how to get, so if you can motivate them, they're going to figure out how to be there. Right. So I would say it'd be strange if you didn't know what motivates somebody. That's maybe you just got to ask them directly and say, what are you here for?
Yeah. What do you want?
Nope.
What is it that you want? Some people, like I said, and I think I talked about this the last week or maybe the week before, it's not always money, right? They're capped out. They're happy with the amount of money they're making. They want something else. It could be more encouragement, more, attaboys and attagirls, in the recognition side. It could be a different position. They could be amazing at what it is that they're doing, but they want to shift. They want to try something new. You got to get in their world and ask them.
Yeah, 100%.
And the last point to this is it's probation. So whether you get into stating, like in an official capacity, that, all right, you're on probation, we're going to be watching you, which isn't necessarily something I always agree with, unless, to me, it's kind of, it's just not my style. But in any event, there needs to be a probational period where you're continually watching them at a higher level than you were before, and making sure that you're checking in on their performance metrics so they can get back on track. You're essentially managing in the best ability that you have to make sure that they're going to be successful. And if they're not, that's why we have a whole nother section to go over here.
I mean, that's where we have our quarterly reviews, and we've talked about that on the last episode of why we do a quarterly review. I mean, quarterly review inherently has a review built into it in 90 days or less, right? So that's when you do your correction and you let them know this is not good enough, or these are the expectations that you have to achieve by next quarter, or we're going to go in another direction. I've said that plenty of times, and that'll get somebody motivated if they really want to be here. Yeah. And it also provides them things that they need to work on to improve, to, stay. So that's very clear. I mean, quarterly review is kind of our version of built-in, probation if need be.
And if somebody doesn't want to be there, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Just all right, cool. It's you can go on. It's this isn't your tribe. This isn't your purpose, your mission. All right, cool. On to the next one.
Yeah, we've had a scenario where we had an employee that was actively looking for another position. It wasn't necessarily because he wasn't happy. It was he was looking for a different challenge. He was young in his career, and he was hungry to learn more. And we were not getting the projects at that time that were feeding that need. And so he just told me, and I helped him find his next job. He was looking for 3 months. He had an opportunity between two companies. I used my connections, reached out to a guy that used to be an executive at one of the companies, found out they were in terrible financial shape. And I just advised him. I said, look, this opportunity doesn't sound like it's a good one long-term for you. He ended up going with the other opportunity. And then that company, that the other company he was looking at, ended up failing 8 months later. So, as long as you do it the right way, your employer, if they're a good employer, should actually help you in your process if it's not a good fit or you're looking for something different.
Yeah, and I'd say that goes back into that communication. There wasn't a surprise in that equation. It was just, okay, both parties are understanding what's going on and the person is moving on. And I think that's important, because not everybody's going to be with some companies forever. I don't like stepping stone employees. If I even get a signal of that, I want nothing to do with that person. But at the end of the day, it's also realizing that somebody might be better somewhere else.
Sure. And people's expectations change, their family statuses change, their financial needs change. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why the equation breaks in the future. But you're right. I like people that want to stick around for a long time. And what a good segue for our holiday party, a little Easter egg for all our employees that are listening, which is probably zero. There's a nice little prize that or gift, I should say, that everyone that's been with us for at least 5 years is going to get this year. And so I'm really excited about that. That's all I will tease for that.
It's a live animal. That's all we're going to say.
Yep. Maybe once was.
Next, all right. So we talked about saving employees, and I guess another thing we should say, like, all right, what constitutes an employee worth saving? I think in your gut, you're going to know what that is. If this is somebody, I wouldn't be I would use logic based on the function of that person's role. And what I mean by saving is getting them back on track. You may need to reshape what it is that their work looks like we were talking about, different challenges that might be somewhere outside of the company. I just wanted to put another point on that before we get into the firing and letting go, right? Because in the firing and letting go side of things, when you terminate an employee, it should be reserved for a specific situation, right? And as I mentioned before, the first point here is there are no surprises. This should never come as a shock. And there should be warning signals, right? So the warning signals could be anything from, hey, this is where you messed up here. You did something wrong. Write-ups, if you do that kind of thing. I know the more corporate you go, the more HR and their grasp expands. So it makes sense to have more documentation at a specific level, especially if you really look into the legal side of things, or if you've been into that type of scenario. And then the communications, as I mentioned before, to let them know that they're off track, unless it's something heinous that, and then of course, then you have to get rid of them. But at the end of the day, there should not be a surprise anywhere in this scenario.
Sometimes there is, though. And, I've had some surprises, or some people get really shocked, and it's shocking to me that they're shocked, because I'm like, how did you not see this coming? And I almost want to ask them that, but you can't. You cannot ask them, how did you not see this coming? But yeah, it's...
Yeah, because that opens up a whole can of worms. I don't want to get like, oh yeah, hey, the other day when you did a thumbs up, to me when we walked in, I thought everything was cool. It's like, wow, those are the signals you look for. But I'd say that's a bad hire, right? Those are at that point, if somebody, further proof, like they didn't see it coming, you gave them all the signals. All right, they didn't know that they were in probation. They didn't see anything. They don't understand the communications. I think it's a good thing that person goes, because what the hell else are they not paying attention to?
Right. And I would say that I've never really, I've never fired somebody that's been with me for probably longer than a year. I think once they get past a year, then there's kind of that mutual expectations, and we haven't.
You're in a rhythm.
I've had people leave, but I've never fired anyone. I've never gotten rid of anyone that's made it a year.
I don't know if I've looked at that. I think I have. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I think some of them were positive, right? Just like, hey, we need to move you on. We're going to go in a different direction, right? And it was accepted. I've had others where it necessarily wasn't, but I just think that was working with young creatives that obviously weren't that creative, so we had to move them on. But and that was one instance that I'm thinking of. That was a surprise, but I think I could have did better in hindsight in potentially managing that.
I've done a really good job of putting people in position to succeed once I know who they are, what they can do, and so sometimes they aren't the ideal fit for that job anymore. And then, I've had to pivot them into a position where we can make them valuable. And I think that's probably what I do a lot of, really, in my role, is just constantly evaluating how to put people in the right position to be as successful as possible, given the scenario we're in with the current clients and the current demands and the current economy. Like, constantly making sure that we got the right person on the right seat occupies a lot of my time.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to match those shifts, and I think it takes a lot of checking in with people and them understanding what where the bar is. Like Jennifer just said, she just what is this? I fired people who've I've had rehires and are working with me as of today. I mean, that's a great sign of just relationship building, right? So if you let them go, they come back. Which in fact we've done that as well. We've had a team member that we moved on that's now back on the team.
Yep.
I want to say two of them, in fact, and I think that's just a great sign of the ability to communicate and hold a relationship where people know, like, all right, this is what happened, this is what's expected, and this is where we're going.
Also, the grass isn't always greener when they leave and they realize, man, it wasn't actually that bad there. It's so easy, especially when you have younger professionals that have a bunch of friends that are all in a bunch of different, like in the development space, everyone's got somebody that works at Facebook or works at Google, and they talk about how amazing it is. And then they come to Oyova and they're like, hey, where's the 8 hours of, recess to my 1 hour of work? And that just doesn't exist here. And so they see these, of these startups that, have these just wildly different expectations, and it kind of poison pills them into wanting to leave. And then they actually go out in those scenarios, and then they're like, nope, I want to go back to that agency world. It was way better.
Yeah, and you also have those friends that, as soon as you leave, the party bus pulls up. Like, dude, it was amazing after you went. Those are potentially the same people that are bragging about how awesome their jobs are. And anybody that says, like, oh, yeah, we barely work. I don't want to work there. What the hell is that? You barely work and you make money? Like, that's a lie is what that is.
Right. Yeah.
All right, getting to number 2 here. This is something I've heard some horror stories on from agencies and companies of all types. Do it face to face. You want to do it in person, because follow the golden rule. You treat others how you want to be treated, right? And granted, with COVID, this might be a little bit different. Do it via video. But if it has to be video, so be it. Don't do it via text, email, or just a phone. I had a friend that working distributed their jobs out west. They're here on the East Coast, and they were let go via an email the other day. Which it's not even that big of a company. I think that's pretty shady. But number 2, do it face to face.
Yeah, I agree. That's the simple. Everyone understands why. I just think it's going to be a Zoom meeting, but even then, that's still awkward.
You're changing somebody's life drastically, right? So what are the 3 things you do, in life the most? I mean, 2 of those is like sleep and then work, right? So,
Sure.
or should be anyway. And you're now drastically changing that.
Yeah, I agree.
And number 3, ready for number 3?
Do it.
I think this one's one of the most important ones. Get right to it. Don't waver. So you want to be clear and concise. You do not want to protract the message, right? So, and to do that, you have to be prepared. Know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. And if you need documentation, if that's part of your process, have all that documentation ready. But I wouldn't prolong anything. Just get right to it. All right, this is essentially moving in a different direction, or whatever you're going to say. Keep it a couple sentences. Don't get into the reasons. Like I said, just keep it short. You do not want to open up a can of worms.
Be matter of fact. Don't get into emotional questions. I feel like this. I felt like you were, those can always be refuted, and they will be. And they're going to be like, no, but what about that? I thought we were really getting along on this one project. Or, hey, we did. No. It's not working out. One of the things I like to say most of all is, I need to make sure I'm as efficient as possible in this role, right? It's not really talking about them. It's me looking at the role in the company and making sure I get as much out of it as I need to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my kind of like, nope, it's over, cut and dry. That's, there's no changing. There's no saving here. I've got one person that was a high up. I had to just say, I can't screw this hiring up. I have to make sure that this role is right for us to be successful, and just make it about what you have to do for your company, and be matter of fact and short and quick, because so easy people want to drag you into that emotional. That's where you get in legal trouble. So, and make sure you follow your state laws on all of this stuff. This is, John and I are in Florida.
Documentation. Yeah. Documentation is necessary for everything.
Florida's easy.
Yeah. It's right to work state. So for any reason you can let somebody go. But yeah, there's definitely states that are have way more restrictions. So you want to be careful. The last thing you want to do is get into a lawsuit.
Right.
Which you touched on one of the points here, which is number 4, be prepared for emotions. So with that said, be empathetic, be kind, but be strong and straightforward. Do not get sucked in. Don't change any of the path that you're setting forward. Don't get suckered into the trap questions, which are some of the ones that Dave just mentioned. Like, what about this? What about that? How about this? So yeah, just make sure you're prepared for the emotions. And at the end of the day, just be authentic. So be honest, be straight up, and then on to the next one.
In the mental space, that I like to tell my managers when they have to do this, because now that we've grown and we have, manager level people, I'm expecting them to do this. I'm not doing all the firings. I mean, they have to do it. So I have to get them prepared. And I go through things with them and I go, keep your mental space in the space that says, I need to do this to make my team more efficient so that I can give raises to the ones that deserve it. Because when you hold on to a resource that isn't working, you're taking resources from the people that really do deserve it and the ones that are going over and above. So, if you approach it that way, it gives you a little bit more resolve and prevents you from getting stuck or suckered into those emotional discussions. Just keep it very matter of fact and, think in your mental space of like, I'm doing this to make my team better. And then we're upgrading our current team, or we're celebrating, or we're incentivizing the better employees to get more, that deserve more. So it's tough. It's an emotional thing. It's a big emotional event. But
at the end of the day, I think what you're getting at is it's not about this one person. It's bigger than that.
Right. You're the shepherd. And when you're letting go of somebody, you're affecting the flock and you're making them stronger, because you're going to bring in another resource that's got more experience or that's better, or you're going to give somebody internally an opportunity to grow, which could have a net effect or a multiplier effect because they see upper momentum and they're getting rewarded. I mean, so the morale goes up. I mean, there's a lot of positives that can come from it, especially if you're getting rid of a cancerous employee. Everyone loves you when you do that.
Yeah, you'll get the cheers and jeers, and why didn't we do that quicker? Yeah, you'll see. Yeah, and then of course you'll find all the things that they weren't doing right. It's going to be tenfold worse than you imagine. But at the end of the day, it's also tenfold better because they're gone.
So one of our last bad hires, I let him go after 2 weeks. I was like, this just isn't going to work out. We got to cut this. And then my employees that recommended him came to me and said, oh yeah, he's been taking 2.5 hour lunches. I'm like, what? Why didn't you tell me that before? I would have fired him a week before. I'm like, why did you wait to tell me that feedback?
A 2.5 hour lunch.
Yeah.
Wow. Like is that like food, a nap, and then a shower? Like,
so I can tell this quick story. This is how I knew it was over. I sent him an article or something about these corporate office spaces, and I was like, I hate how soulless and generic these office spaces are, and we don't work in a generic office space. And he responded back with, yeah, I miss those office spaces. I feel like I have to carry a gun around here. And that was like my instant gut. I'm like, you don't even like arriving to the location of the job. I'm like, all right, we need to talk. And then I cut him right there. I was like, I've already been thinking about it. But then he wrote his own sentence right there. I was like, you're done.
Yeah. On to the next one with that guy. Yeah. There was a lot of hopes for that guy too. It's funny. I remember that dude.
Yep.
But yeah, that's essentially what we have today to move the ones you don't want out, and the good ones, and keep the good ones. And keeping the good ones, everybody goes through bad times. Everybody has bad patches, right? So I think it's important, if you really want to be a good leader and support your team, you have to have that compassion to understand, right? What they got, like right now, we got the World Series, which the Rays hopefully are going to win. Last night would not be a signal to that. But yeah, I mean, there's some hitters that they get into a slump, right? So I mean, they're not doing as well as they normally do. When you have those people on your team, you just take them aside, get into their world, put them on a path, find out if they're actually still interested in the position they're in. Maybe something changed in their personal life. Whatever you got to do, if it makes sense to keep them on board, make sure you do that, because it's going to be really expensive if you don't.
Yeah, give them a couple quick W's. Give them some quick wins. Change their project load up. If that's the case, if somebody's in a slump, you can break the. Well, we did a whole episode about that, breaking out of a slump, and maybe we need to revisit that again. But
yeah, put it into the show notes for this one. So I do want to sum these bad boys up. All right. So how to save an employee that might be struggling. Number one, communication, right? So dig in, restate your vision, identify that issue, and then, make sure that you're doing one-on-one. So you're continually communicating, right? Number two is motivation, right? Find out what actually motivates them. Number three, probation, some type of probationary period to make sure that you're managing them so they can get back on track where you need them to be. So they're executing on the function for your company. So they're successful, right? All right. Now, the firing and letting go standpoint, don't ever hire somebody that has a giant bag of half-smoked cigarettes. All right, all joking aside, number one, no surprises. Shouldn't come as a shock. That means you communicated somewhere in that path before. Number two, do it face-to-face. Follow that golden rule. That's how you would probably want it. You don't want to receive a text message where somebody's like, hey, it's not working out. Number three, get it right. Don't waver. So get right to it. You do not want to protract it in any way or form. Hey, it's not working out. We're going in a different direction. Or as Dave said, hey, I'm responsible for the efficiency here. So, you're essentially contaminating that efficiency, or however he does it. Number four, and this is kind of number 4.5, be prepared for the emotions, right? So don't get pulled into the suckered questions. You want to be empathetic, but make sure that you're straightforward, and follow number three, get to the point. And of course, just be authentic and straight up. All right, this is our process. All right, I'm sorry. I wish you best of luck. On to the next one.
So one note we should have thrown in there is, I always try to offer them, if I do have to let somebody go, I'm like, I don't want it to be a disruptive thing in their life long term. So I usually pay a couple extra pay periods to let them figure out a way to smooth that out. But that also, from an employer perspective, allows you to have a little bit of leverage if you need to get things back, a laptop or, whatever materials, or you need to have them, not expose customer information or something like that. So, I mean, by giving them a little something to say, hey, I'm going to keep paying you for the next month, or 2 weeks for every year service, or, however you want to put that together in your process. I mean, giving them that incentive can help prevent major issues as well.
And I agree. I think in that the preparation stage that mentioned, right? So it's not a surprise. That means you need to be prepared as a manager. Meaning, all right, what are all the things that you need to lock them out of?
Right.
I've seen some people hang on to somebody for too long because they're worried about how their exposure if this person is gone to the company. I think that's all in your head. Usually whatever proprietary information you have isn't as important as it is. And you can lock somebody down and make it an amicable separation, saying like, all right, look, I actually had fears. These are the things I want to go after. Now, if you hired somebody that's just axe murderer, potentially coming in there wielding a shiny gun type of person, I mean, that's another scenario. Those are the outliers. And at that point, I haven't dealt with that situation. I imagine there's a company out there or somebody that you can hire to do that. And of course, as you mentioned, make sure that you have everything legally tied up. So speak to an attorney based on your sales process, based on your state. If you're in the state of Florida, this is a pretty good one. But again, neither of us are attorneys.
True statement.
Very true. Other than that, my friend, anything else that you would like to address, Dave?
No, I'm good. Write us out.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Brandon and Jennifer, thank you so much for chiming in with some comments there. Everybody, great chatting with you. And if you want to join, Jon at digitalmastermind.com, Jon at digitalmastermind.com. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye now.